Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. My name is Ayuba, and of course, today is Friday. Thank God it's Friday, and we're happy to have you join us on the show this morning. Well, this is coming just a few hours after the Daily Trust 19th dialogue. It was held at the NAF Center, that is the Nigerian Air Force Conference Center, in Abuja yesterday. It was quite fully packed. A lot of issues were deliberated, talking about security, economy, and also politics ahead of the 2023 general elections. So if you've missed, then I can bet you that you actually missed quite a lot. But there's no hope that is lost. You can always catch up on our YouTube. Just go there and find all the details. And now today we'll be taking a look at takeaways from the Daily Trust dialogue that held yesterday. Quite a number of issues. The chairman, who is the General Abdul Salami, yesterday was there, and he gave quite a lot of insightful perspectives to some of the recent challenges that Nigeria is dealing with at the moment. So we'll be looking at all of that, and of course taking a look at the dailies on Daybreak, and of course the news highlights, as well as other segments on the show. Please stay with us. We'll take a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the news highlights. Please stay with us. All right, now let's take a look at the news highlights on Daybreak. We'll begin with the story from the Nigerian Police Force. Now, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, said that there must be synergy between the police, military, and other security agencies to win the war against banditry, militancy, and all forms of insurgency in the country. The police boss stated this while speaking in Calabar on Thursday during a one-day familiarization tour. Now, the IGP emphasized the need for the police to collaborate with the military and other sister agencies to fight their common enemy, noting that the crime is dynamic due to the time and individuals involved. He said that the force is revamping all the police training colleges across the country so that the schools can have better and improved infrastructure to provide qualitative training for intakes. All right, now another story there. A bill to make the Securities and Exchange Commission the apex regulatory body for the Nigerian capital market passed through second reading at the House of Representatives. The bill, sponsored by Babangida Ibrahim, APT Katsina, seeks to repeal the Investment and Securities Act 2007 and enacts the Investments and Securities Bill to establish Securities and Exchange Commission as the highest regulatory body in the nation's capital. Now, in the nation's capital market, according to the sponsor of the bill, when passed into law, it will enable SEC to properly regulate the capital market, ensure capital formation, protect the market to ensure capital formation, protect investors, maintain fair, efficient, and transparent market, and reduce system risk. Meanwhile, the motion passed for second reading after the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila's voice vote. All right, let's take a look at other stories. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries says Nigeria's crude oil production declined by 78,000 barrels per day in December, producing an average of 1.197 million barrels per day. According to the OPEC's oil market report for January 2022, showed that the output in December is the lowest it produced in 2021, partly due to the non-functional refineries and the output outage in the country. The report said in December, Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria had declared force majeure on Nigerian Forcados crude oil after a malfunctioning barge obstructed a tanker path. Now, OPEC said that Nigeria produced an average of 1.27 million barrels per day in November, topping Africa's producers list, while production declined sharply to 1.35 million barrels per day by 45,000 barrels per day in October from about 1.40 million barrels per day in December in the same year. Now in June, July and August, production averaged 1.31 million and 1.32 million and 1.24 million barrels per day, respectively. All right, now let's take a look at the events that made history on this day, the 21st of January. Well, today in history, there you have it. It was quite important that we remember some of these facts, in our history. Now, in 1993, popular musician Fela Aníkúlápó Kuti was arrested on this day. We all know, if we know the story about Fela, he's someone who has been very vocal, about politics and government through his music. And all over the world, he's recognized as having this very unique genre of music that has gone worldwide. As a matter of fact, he sold Nigeria to the world through his music.
Yes, he did. And, a lot of people seem to think him a martyr. And, a lot of people respected him back then. They still do, even those who were not born when, he started his music. But it's also a good thing to know that his sons are actually taking over and, pushing his genre and kind of music to the world.
And one thing to, remember about Fela is his fearlessness.
Yes.
You could recall that, despite the fact that we had military government in place, he was never scared to express himself in whichever way he feels like it. In fact, he goes to the extent of calling names of people that he felt, are not...
we're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that.
So it's really... well, he was really a phenomenon, I would say. He is a person to reckon with.
But do we see people like that, rising up right now? People like that speaking for the masses, people speaking against, the government when they do wrong?
I mean, we still have them. Fela now will be like an enigma because in his days, it was the military days. Now we are in a democratic dispensation. So you may not spot people who are, very vocal and speaking out. We have them, plenty of them. But because, we have more people doing that now because of a democratic dispensation. So there's freedom of speech, freedom of expression and all that. So, but in those days, not many people are really given to, speaking out, against government and criticizing and all that. Not many people are doing that. So the very few who were doing that stood out. And one of them is the likes of Fela, who used his music. And let's not forget, too, that when he traveled out to go and study medicine, it turns out that he came back with a degree in music, which is, contrary to what he was sent to go study. So he knew his dream, he followed it through. And today, he is an enigma to remember. We remember him on this day. All right, now let's take a look at other items on our table today. We'll be looking at the dailies on Daybreak shortly after this breather. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, now let's begin with Daily Trust newspaper. We'll be looking at quite a number of issues. The lead story, 19th Daily Trust dialogue, of course, as expected. Security, economic recovery, key to 2023 elections success. You have the riders that says Nigeria at a crossroads, Abdul Salami, and also many threats ahead of polls. That's Media Trust Chair, Yusuf and Morotala. You have also, we need competent leaders to overcome challenges, Atiku and Zulum. Politics too important to be left to politicians alone. That's according to the Sultan of Sokoto. And then you have the other stories at the top there. Abdul Salami to FG, fuel price hike, recipe for chaos. Varsity workers, NLC, TUC mobilized for January 27 mass action. And then you see, we will engage labor. That's according to governors. Other stories there. I'm impressed by El-Rufai's performance in Kaduna. That's the president there speaking during his visit to Kaduna State to commission some projects there. At the very bottom, you'd see, or rather the pictorial there shows you pictures from the Daily Trust dialogue, where you had in attendance the governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum, and you have also Atiku Abubakar, the former vice president, and of course you have Abdul Salami Abubakar, the former head of state, and also at the panelists there, you see, some of the guests that appeared, for panel discussions. Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, also the Dr. Murtala Rufai and Ifeko Moigo Okaru. They were the guest speakers at that event. And then at the bottom there, hospitals to drop HMOs January 31 over poor tariffs and debts. You'd also see Niger governor endorses Tinubu for presidency. And then the next story there, how Kano school proprietor killed, buried 5-year-old pupil. Very sad story, really. For details of that, pick a copy and turn to page 5. You'd get all the details about that sad story of a 5-year-old girl that was killed, really. It was
a really sad one, All right, moving on to the next newspaper, which is the Nation newspaper. At the top there, you'd find a story that says, Bello to Tinubu, you can take Lagos feats to Abuja. And we have a writer here that says, Niger governor backs APC stalwart, ex-governor visits IBB. Moving on, thanks for linking me with your success, Buhari tells El-Rufai, and you can find details of that story on page 5. Still on page 5, Abdusalami cautions politicians over fiery comments. All right, the lead story there has to do with the controversy surrounding the petrol subsidy and the NEC, that's the National Economic Council, saying petrol subsidy can't continue beyond June. And And the writers here say decision on pump price belongs to NNPC and no going back on January 27 protests, says NLC. And right at the bottom there, you'd find a story that says WHO recommends lifting of travel restrictions, and then reps to probe missing arms. These are the stories that made the front page of the Nation newspaper today.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. There you'd see the lead story. Abdul Salami, workers warn FG as NEC decides subsidy removal in June. Well, we heard the other time the Senate president saying that the president has not asked anyone to remove fuel subsidy. But here we are, National Economic Council. Well, the next one there, the writers, they're saying petrol price hike will push more Nigerians deeper into poverty, warns ex-head of state. Also, you see life already difficult for Nigerians. Don't increase fuel pump price, Sanu tells FG. And then the next one, there is 6-month provision for fuel subsidy. We'll take a position after that. And that's according to the council. You'll see also the pictures there showing you when Buhari visited Kaduna yesterday. And then below that, Buhari recalls Kaduna bombing experience. El-Rufai demands 7 billion naira reimbursement. Okay. You'll see the next stories at the bottom there. You'll see INC, Yoruba group seek to join CNG suit on Biafran agitation. LASMA probes officers' attack on commercial bus. Female passengers eye injured. And then you see, you transformed Lagos, do same for Nigeria. Niger governor tells Tinubu. And then at the top there, reps order probe of allegedly missing 178,459 police firearms. And the next one, Electoral Act faces delay at the National Assembly, harmonization yet to start. At the very top, Port Harcourt refinery project, 3.96 billion liters petrol annually, aviation fuel report. These are some of the stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper today.
All right, let's move on to the Guardian newspaper. And we have the lead story there that boldly says petrol may sell for 403 naira per litre as governors engage labor. And the writers here that states a federal government currently paying 24 naira as a subsidy on every litre of petrol. Expect a decision on subsidy removal in June. NEC tells Nigerians, fire me, governors not responsible for removal, PIA should run its course. And then NLC insists on February 1 national protest, mobilizes labor across the country. And then right beside the page, you'd see some stories there. On page 3, court bars NNPC ministry from allocating crude to oil firm. Reps investigates missing 178,459 police arms. And then for business, travelers stranded as airlines ditch U.S. destinations over 5G rollout. We also have how terrorists try to kill me in Kaduna by Buhari. And then on page 6 there, you'd find a story that says, prepare for uprising worse than hashtag answers if you hike fuel price. Abdusalami warns a federal government. And right below, you'd see 2023 Northeast legislators back North Central colleagues on Yahaya Bello. These are the stories that are making rounds on the Guardian newspaper.
All right, let's get perspectives on some of these stories now. And we have in the studio the editor of 21st Century Chronicle, Nuruddin Abdullah, to talk to us about some of these stories here on the front pages of our newspapers. Welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
All right. Well, let's begin with the sad one, really, the very heart-touching story about the schoolgirl in Kano that was, killed. I think I saw a story on the 21st Century Chronicle.
Yeah, sure.
You know, on that. You know, a very, very sad story. What's your reaction to this happening?
You know, it's really a sad, tragic incident, not only for the parents of Hanifa Abubakar, but for almost all Nigerians. If you look at it, the story trended yesterday. 47 days ago, her picture trended. Very beautiful, cherubic girl, you know, full of life, that she was abducted. You know, the release, when calls were made, you remember they demanded ransom. You know, the rescue Hanifa, there was a hashtag 47 days ago. Until yesterday, we had the most devastating news that she was actually killed. Killed not by one rogue outside, by her teacher. You see how devastating it is. Going forward, what we learn from this, as a reaction to the tragedy yesterday, Commissioner of Education in Kano is saying that the school has been shut down. They will equally clamor on unregistered private schools that populated the state. So that's the problem. Nobody knows if this school into the Murtala in corner Ghana in Kano was even registered. Very not many states, particularly in the northern part of the country, take this serious. Yes, there is an issue of quality, poor quality in public schools. So people resort to all these mushrooms schools. I call them mushrooms because garages have been converted into private schools and they are called international schools. And people, because of the poor nature of the public schools across the states, you know, resort to this issue. And because of the poor nature as well as the unregulated nature of the industry, all manner of characters, psychos, rapists, mentally retarded characters are being recruited as teachers. Because what happened, you know, I couldn't imagine. You know,
in fact,
as a father, you understand what?
Very sad, really. Is the way and manner in which she was even killed, you know, is what even baffles me. You know, given rat poison.
Can you imagine?
A baby, you know, of 5. So it's really sad, you know, to have this kind of happenings. Like you said, it seemed to me that there's a mental health issue here.
Exactly. And all manner of people have been in, I am not saying that the public schools are better, but all manner of people have been recruited. Kidnappers have been recruited as teachers. Robbers have been recruited as teachers. People with mental issues have been recruited. Look at that example. So what we should do, what state government should do, is to regulate these schools. Yes, there is a problem. Government or public schools are not living up to expectation, but that we should not allow all manner of mushroom schools to spring up all over the place. Look at even the nature of the school, if you look at the video footage yesterday. So it was a ramshackle facility being run by people who should be psychiatrists.
This seemed to give credence to the exercise embarked upon by Karuta in Kano State about registering tricycle operators, isn't it?
Sure. And you know, people are against it. You can't, and you know, because in Kaduna, for instance, there is a sort of curfew for this tricyclist. Anything 6, they are off the street. So there is a mass exodus to Kano. And you know, people go and see what happened to social media. People politicize everything. Yes, the government has failed in providing decent public transportation, but that does not mean that all manner of characters should bring tricycles to Kano and populate the city. No, there should be regulation. But you know, when they went for a 3-day strike, people were trekking, and as if the whole world was coming down. Government must regulate distance.
Okay, now talking about schools, you know, regulating, you know, the kind of teachers that they bring into, you know, their four. One thing I know is that as Nigerians, you know, we don't really believe in a mental or psychological, you know, evaluation before recruiting teachers into schools, because when you talk about these things happening, it's not just in Kano, it happens everywhere, and these are actually the ones that we know of. For example, there's a story of a man in Niger State who actually defiled 13 of his students. Do you get? So how are we to say, or how are we to know for sure that if government decides to regulate, you know, these schools, that these things will stop?
If the government does that, I think we will drastically reduce these incidents. I remember about 2 weeks ago in Kaduna, 2 schools were shut, and they are faith-based schools. You know, because, like I say, the failure of government to meet up with its responsibility in providing quality education to Nigerians. All manner of schools. Almost every mosque has a school. Every church has a school now. Faith-based schools. The quality is so poor. The environment is so... I don't even know how to. Some are in garages with roofing sheets. So I am imagining the temperature in the afternoon. And all manner of teachers have been recruited to teach, who have been paid peanuts. The case of Kaduna, there are 2 Islamia schools. One teacher impregnated a girl. The other one was a case of rape. What that simply means is this: people hide under all manner, particularly religion. You know, it's a very sensitive matter. To perpetrate all manner of things, and you know you cannot talk because no, you're trying to ridicule the religion, or you're trying to ridicule the people who, you know, who camouflage, who hide under this religious toga to commit all manner of crimes.
And you know, it's really painful. If you look at, this is coming just a few days when we heard about, you know, an aid worker who raped a girl and who eventually committed suicide. So one begin to question the humanity of our society. You know, have we lost it?
Like I said, she mentioned mental health. Mental health is something that we don't take serious. If we see Mr. Ayuba parking and he enters a psychiatric hospital trying to console a doctor, wow. In Hausa they will say, you know, the tepeng hankeli. So anything psychiatric, we don't want to do with it. We don't want to have anything to do with it. And it may be used against you if you are contesting an election. He has been to a psychiatric hospital. Whereas mental health is an integral part of our life, just like any other aspect of life. So these are things, during the Tinubu days in Lagos, I remember, if you have a parking ticket, your license will be confiscated, your vehicle impounded, until you get a certificate from a public institution, a psychiatric institution, to say that, yes, your head is correct, like they say in Pidgin. I think maybe we have to start that all teachers to be recruited should undergo mental health, periodic mental checks from government hospitals. I don't want a ramshackle schools to go to another ramshackle facility and obtain OSHOD certificate. I think we have to start from that aspect. And you know, the issue is the governments and officials have to be bold. They shouldn't be blackmailed. Oh, this is a religious school. Because all manner of corporate, look at what happened yesterday. While we are, the country is being devastated by what happened to Hanifa Ikano, a case came up from Maiduguri, a very prominent school. This bullying by seniors, it should be sanctioned. Look at, you see the footage. He almost killed that child with razor blade.
Very sad indeed.
So
Okay, what about, you talked about ramshack schools and all that. What about poor Nigerian parents who can, barely afford to feed themselves, but, still want to give their children or their wards, a proper education?
proper education does not start and end with passing WAEC and JAM. Education is about child's development. You should be mindful of where that child will be taking his lessons. Who are his tutors? We patronize all these schools simply because you want your son to pass the WAEC, to get 300 or 350 or 280 in his JAM. That's it.
Miracle centers, isn't it?
You have to look at the nature of the school. This is where your kid. Is it conducive? Most of them, if you go to urban slums, 2-bedroom apartment converted into a full-fledged international secondary school.
You know, I'm curious about the role of parents here. You know, we've had situations where children will go to school and children will be in school and then it's closing time, nobody is there to pick them up, and all of that. So what attitude should we see, from parents in terms of being very deliberate and being careful with the way they, treat this
I think what happened to Hanifa, unfortunately, should be an eye-opener to parents. Never trust anyone. And even school authorities, they should put safeguards. The type of people they employ as security, as teachers, among others. And if you look at it now, particularly in the urban areas, must either you go to work, your wife goes to work. And maybe you can afford a driver that will pick your schools. Maybe you drop them, your wife speaks them later. Traffic and what have you, all these kind of things. They are part and integral part of our life. So we have to strike a balance. Send schools to send your kids to neighborhood schools where it is easy for them to be picked. Don't work in Maitama and send your kids to, let's say, Gwarimpa, or you stay in Gwarimpa and send your kids to school in Maitama or Asokoro. Looking at the distance and what have you. So, all these are realities that we have to face squarely. First, to save the children and to save their future. And we should know that education does not start and end with passing exams. And that's why we are patronizing all this manner of schools. Some of them are even, what do they call them, in centers, where the children can be held during WAEC, where he can be held, you pay money and somebody will sit for the exams.
Miracle centers.
Miracle centers. Majority of them are miracle centers.
Okay, let's move on to another story making rounds, talking about reps probing missing 178,459 police firearms and ammunition. Let's have your thoughts.
It's a serious matter. What that means is this number of about 700, right? About 780. About 780,
780, right? Yes, almost.
Yes, almost 780 rifles are in the wrong hands now. Yes, that's the import of this story. Some rogue somewhere are operating with these rifles. And you look at it more than, if you look at what you see the breakdown, most of them are, almost half of it are assault rifles. What if you? Then you link this with the prevalent insecurity. So you talk of light arms, porous borders. What that means is these arms that are missing are in the hands of kidnappers, bandits, Boko Haram terrorists, political talks, and so on and so forth. So they are not even coming from the border.
Right.
These are officials' weapons. The government spent money to acquire for our security agents, saddled with the maintenance of law and order, the police. The Auditor General can only audit the police. If the military can be audited, the revelation will be more devastating. This is just the police.
I mean, we've had cases of where even terrorists, Boko Haram, attack barracks and go to the armory, take arms and all that.
That is even an outright attack. There are instances where military personnel, during the Obasanjo days, a colonel, I remember, and some majors, were arrested and prosecuted for selling arms. These guys were in Jaji, and they were selling arms from our Kachia military facility to Niger Delta militants. As a result of that, a serving GOC, who was even army chief, was removed. That was just one instance that came to the public light.
I think last week there was even a story of a fake major general who was arrested, and you could actually see the guns.
It's not a fake IG or a fake police commissioner. A fake major general with all the compliments. That is not even new. Some years back, here in Abuja, a fake colonel was arrested. Colonel with troops, real troops, escorting him, heavily armed. Look at the arms.
You said real troops?
Real troops, yes.
Real troops?
He was
these
fake.
are military officers?
Yeah.
Military officers, yes, I remember. Even this one.
How did that even happen?
Corruption. He was intercepted at the checkpoint along Kujihi. The troops that were following him were real, with a painted official car. So they zoomed up. They were arrested, were found out to be real soldiers. But the guy was a fake colonel.
But someone deployed those soldiers to escort him, isn't it?
Sure.
So how did they get deployed?
Money exchange hands. Corruption.
And yet we didn't hear about the person that did the deployment.
No. I think the matter died there. I don't even remember whether they were prosecuted or not. Mark you, a fake commissioner of police was arrested at the force headquarters, Louis Edet House. And Daily Trust, I remember, did that story. He has been there for years. Every morning he goes there, he receives all the complimentaries and what have you. He goes into the IG's office and what have you. He transacted business on behalf of the force headquarters.
It makes you wonder how many other fakes there are.
I mean, exactly. I mean, how do we even know if there are no more of such people in the services? And, the implication of them being in those places on our efforts to deal with, criminal elements. There could be saboteurs of some sort.
Last year, I think, or so, a fake deputy controller general of customs was arrested. You remember? They dismissed it as a psychiatric case, but he wasn't an officer, fully dressed. So this question our even security issue. You remember when NDA was attacked last year? There are so many issues. Some people spoke and, we politicize things. I remember there was somebody that almost some parts of the country, rose against him when he said, I concur with that position. You don't need to have Juma'at mosques in military facilities to be used by people who are not residents of those facilities. Go to our college here. All manner of people get into our college on Friday on a day like this to perform the Juma'at prayer. Do you know who are they?
And they are not personnel.
You remember? But when people talk, they'll say, no, 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 no. We are not saying that people should not pray. They should go to public designated worship facilities. They have no business get you into NDA on a Friday to pray if you are not resident of that facility. There was a story by one of our colleagues. He did it. On Friday, he went to a military facility in Lagos. He dressed like a Muslim. He wasn't being a Muslim, he was an undercover journalist. And he got full access. In fact, an officer on duty guided him where the mosque. He repeated the same thing on Sunday. He held the Holy Bible. And a military officer on duty guided him. Religion is, we are using religion, to compromise so many other things. But we don't want to talk about religion because we don't want to be stigmatized.
All right, before we go, because of our time, I'd like for us to talk about this issue of fuel subsidy. It's generating a lot of reactions. Even from the Daily Trust Dialogue yesterday, we saw comments by General Abdulsalami Abubakar, on that. And then we are seeing also that governors have engaged labor and that a liter of fuel is likely to sell for 403 naira. In one breath, we also heard that the NEC is looking at 305 or so. So the conversations are just, on top gear.
Yes. With the privatization of NNPC, NNPC is now a private liability company. There won't be subsidy. That is the naked truth. The government presently is spending about 200 billion to subsidize PMS.
You mean monthly?
Monthly, yes. You remember some months ago, NNPC could not remit a dime to FAC because what they generated, they used it to pay subsidy. The reality, yes, General Abdulsalam has spoken yesterday. Many people pay, or maybe on behalf of the masses. But this is not sustainable. Australia, it's not sustainable. You can't eat your cake and have it again. All governors.
But the concern is about, how difficult things have turned out to be, economically for many Nigerians in terms of, the spending power of Nigerians and affording basic, amenities and all of that. Basic things of life. I mean, food, water, very basic things. I mean, a bag of pure water is going for almost 300 naira now. Not to even talk about rice and other food items. Food inflation is just on another level. So, with all of these difficulties, by the time you remove fuel subsidy, what do you think is going to happen if there's no any arrangement to cushion these effects?
Australia, petroleum industry law is in place. NNPC is no longer a Father Christmas. That's the reality. Those in charge of the economy should work and think outside the box to ameliorate this suffering you have mentioned. But getting billions, about 200 billions every month from NNPC as a subsidy for one product is not realistic, and that's what the governors are saying.
So, to ameliorate the suffering, they are proposing 5,000 naira transport
grant
allowance or
for Nigerians,
palliative
transport grant for poor Nigerians.
For you and me, or
for poor Nigerians. So,
for Nigerians.
Again, what's your reaction to that?
We have tried that. There are all manner of segments of social investment, but it seems that they are not working. You remember 20,000 was given for 3 months, we were given to about how many thousand Nigerians across the local government. I can tell you authoritatively that this has been hijacked by politicians. They give it to their wives, even though they have enough. What I'm saying simply is the government must think outside the box. But the subsidy removal is a reality. We should go with it. But on the other hand, there are certain things that can be done. 200 billion can do it a lot on the economy. Instead of giving it to PMS, you have 5 cars at home. heavy duty in jeeps and what have you that guzzle fuel. I have just my chekele with maybe in a week I buy only 3,000 naira something. So you are the one enjoying the subsidy, not me. There is no subsidy on diesel. There is no subsidy on kerosene. And what have you. Most of our trucks use diesel that transport food items from one part of the country to the other. It has been deregulated already. So what suffering could it add again?
Okay, now the governors, have actually moved to abort, a nationwide strike, set to commence by labor leaders on February. But, I've been seeing this particular title, on every newspaper. And it seems to me, I don't know what you think, but it seems to me that, the governors seem to be more interested in stopping that protest than, looking at, how the Nigerians would actually suffer once this subsidy is removed.
The labor groups, I don't know, they use industrial action as a weapon. But come to think, how realistic are their demands? How realistic are their demands? If, for instance, now, how many workers do we have all over the Federation? How many are into the public sector, organized private sector, non-organized private sector, if there is a little like that? And those who are even into, they don't belong to any of these groups. We should look at the larger picture. NLC, all these groups, just like ASU, make demands that are realistic. You are asking, let's say, for 2 trillion. As a governor or as a president, how much do I have? It is not only education that I will fund. If I don't do roads, ASU will insult me. If they go to hospitals that drugs, they will insult me. They need water. I have to fund security. There are so many demands crying for attention, all the sectors. It's just like this thing, like they say, UN say that you should give 20% of your budget to education. Health will say you should give 25%. If you look at all these things, what remains?
Okay, now, if you look at all the reactions that we are seeing, each time this issue of removing fuel subsidy comes up, is there ever going to be a time where we'll have a consensus on this matter, where all Nigerians will actually agree that, look, it's not sustainable, it's time to take this off?
I think it has to do with the problem of the government. They are not communicating their policies well. The poor man or an average Nigerian believes that subsidy is benefiting him, whereas it is not. Let's look at it from the layman's point of view. See, the central bank, NNPC is spending 200 billion every month on subsidy, PMS alone. Map it. Go to Yobe. How many liters of PMS do they consume on a monthly basis? Go to Adamawa, go to Taraba, go to Jigawa, for instance. If you minus the commercial centers, Kano, Kaduna, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Aba, what have you, most of this one, they consume less. So how much of the subsidy is trickling to you?
Well, if you talk about that, people will say, look, transportation is key to everyone, not just the elites, even to the poor. If, for instance, you have a farmer who has products he wants to sell in the market, where we know that most of the northern states, are, largely farmers, how do they move their goods to the markets and how do they sell them? You know that that's definitely going to have an implication on the cost, of the whatever they are selling, the food items they are selling.
What we're saying here, traders hike their prices when recently the president said that he will increase the police salary. And automatically that will say, okay, the traders will increase their prices of goods and what have you. The ABC and XYZ of this remove subsidy, let's face the stark reality. And government must be transparent. When this subsidy is removed, yeah, we have excess. What do we do with it? On the part of the governors, the president is giving them all money under all manner of names. escrow apart from the fact and loans. But he don't ask them what did they do with it. A state governor from the North Central, for instance, collected more than 10 of such facilities.
Does the president has the powers to ask them what they do with the money?
Yes, because the money comes from me. When during Minister of Finance Adiosun, when this issue of bailout started, there were criteria. But almost all these governors floated those criteria, and the government the president keeps giving them money to pay salary, and still they are still owing. So the issue is simple. Government and the public we over-centralize issues, even our safeguards. Let's go back to the governors. Mr. Elia, you are governor of XYZ state. You collected so amount. What have you done with it? Let's say you are the local government chairperson of XYZ.
I mean,
you collected so much. What did you do with it?
But that's very little that the president can do in this instance, isn't it? These are elected governors.
No, what we're saying here is, but he gives them money, loan. He has no power to stop their FAC. But bail out, he has that power because it's a loan. If you don't fulfill this criteria, no money for you. Mr. XYZ, you are from the North Central State, you collected 200 billion as bailout to settle salaries. But up to now, you are still paying somebody who earns 60,000 is collecting 5,000. Somebody who has 100,000 is collecting 15,000. Okay. What happened?
I think we need to go on a quick break right now. You know, it's really getting heated. We'll take a quick breather, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion. Stay tuned.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak, reaching you from Trust Television's headquarters in the nation's capital. And here we've been discussing some of the issues on the front pages of our newspapers here, and we have Nuruddin Abdallah, the editor, 21st Century Chronicle, with us in the studio, giving us perspectives on some of these issues. But let's move on to other areas of our discussions to talk about the Daily Trust dialogue that held yesterday. A lot of issues really came on board. The issue of security, the economy, and politics ahead of the 2023 elections. So at the end of the day, you'd find that all of these things are interwoven. They are interlinked, and they all point to one thing, which is the issue of leadership, right? So, but before we get into the discussion, let's take a look at some of the highlights from the event yesterday.
Full of up and downs, as you all know. We had 6 general elections in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, and 2019. I would not like to dwell on whether those elections were credible, free, or fair. We have gone past them. What is obvious is that despite the imperfections, those electoral experiences have given us opportunities for introspection and learning, and provide basis for strengthening our democratic institutions. Now, to borrow from the late Chief M.K.O. Abiola's presidential campaign slogan, which you might remember from 1993, Nigeria is on the march again.
Nigeria has recorded 574 cases of kidnappings and 431 confirmed fatalities in security incidents that cut across 29 states and 96 local government areas in December 2021 alone.
To make it real, let me ask my 9-year-old what she feels about the economy. After all, she has more life than we do, or should have more life by the grace of God. And just talking to her impromptu, her thoughts were, the economy is not going well. And then she went on about how people are not being paid salaries. And this was just off the cuff. People are not happy. There's no fairness. Talked about how people put up their family members and those close to them in positions that they have no business to be in, rather than using competence to drive that. And those
Well, those are takeaways from the event yesterday, quite insightful, if I may add. Now, let's get your own thoughts, as someone who has worked, on this team for quite a while, before you eventually moved to other platforms. What's, your thinking about the 19th Daily Trust Dialogue?
You see, this dialogue is different because of the timing. I think it's the dialogue that is the very one that will usher us into real electioneering. You understand? Electioneering in the sense that the sitting president is not contesting election. So the campaign will be tensed. From the ruling party itself, it wouldn't be like what we had in 2019, where there was a candidate, but now all the lieutenants of the president, governors, and what have you, are scrambling to succeed him. And the opposition, on the other hand, is equally doing same to unseat the ruling party from security, politics, and economy. It's a troika. So if you look at all what the experts, statesmen, professionals said, 2022 is an election year. So the 19th Trust Dialogue, provided a platform where agenda are set.
Yes. Now, again, on issue of agenda is being set, how well would you say politicians and policymakers have taken seriously some of the very, very critical resolutions and creative ideas, that have come of some of such dialogues, in terms of shaping their thoughts, for Nigerians?
Yes, the dialogue is being, this is the 19th one, it's been done by a newspaper, one of the leading newspapers in the country. So there is that publicity and confidence, even in the public. It is not organized by government or any government agency. And if you look at it, you will see it's a salad. Even the people that talk there, it's a mix from the private sector, those who are in government, statesmen, and what have you. And they came together and they share their experience. And people watch, people listen, even the policymakers. You remember, look at attendance, despite security, it's one of the most well-attended. And because people have confidence on it, it is not a gathering that like maybe other papers do, that they award all the governors in the country will have awards. All the captains of blue chips industries will have awards. All the lawmakers, no. Tackle issues. They raise them, provide solutions, and it is left for those in authority, to take them or not. I remember, it's one of the dialogue that President Obasanjo, remember the Hilton, asked President Erdogan to resign because of his ill health. It was a daily trust dialogue during the Erdogan's time. So it's a platform where people come freely, those in power, or those who have been in power before, but now they are outside, those from the private sector, opposition politicians, and what if you. The proposed solution, particularly we are getting into a very tense political atmosphere. We are looking at the wranglings within the ruling party, because Buhari won't be on the ballot. So the primaries in APC alone will be a very serious thing to deal with.
Okay, now let's take a look at more takeaways from that dialogue.
The importance of security in our lives. And I've said it so many times at so many fora. You cannot do anything without security. You cannot even worship God Almighty the way you want to, the way He ordered you to, without security. For me, without security, you cannot have anything. You can't develop. And when you can't develop, you are static. Of course, you know what that means. And I think it's important for us, whenever we're talking of insecurity, we put on the table exactly what we mean by insecurity. And across the world, for some of us that were opportune or privileged to be in the most destabilized regions of the world for 3 years, working as a military advisor. By my military background, I know what insecurity is about. But when I was a military advisor in Pakistan, 2003 to 2006, I was covering Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, and the Gulf states. And all of you know, up to now, those are the areas where you have these serious challenges of insecurity. And I think it's important for us, as we talk to ourselves, we talk with honesty and truthfulness.
The nexus between peace, security, and development need not to be overemphasized. Once there's no peace, there's no security. Once there's no security, there's no development. But we should also have to understand the root causes of the insurgency, which are not limited to endemic poverty, pervasive illiteracy, high social inequality, poor economic infrastructure, poor social infrastructure, environmental degradation, climate change, drug abuse, among others. Until we address these root causes, we'll not get it right.
I live in my village up to today, and I know what is going on. And even when we were talking of some famous people like Dogo Gede, Dogo Gede didn't start the banditry. The person who started it is a family of Alhaji Muyaya. Alhaji Muyaya had about 100 cows, and he was exiting to Niger, where they usually go. And then he was arrested by the police, taken to Mina. And at the end of the day, he lost 92 cows to corruption from the police, to something and all this kind of thing. Now, what did he do? The balance of the cows, he bought one AK-47. Initially, he was not attacking individual in the bush. He was attacking police posts. So when he attacked police posts, he would take their guns and use them for other operations. And that's how he get Dogo Gede, who is also his cousin. And he too, he was stripped up of his sword. So what is happening to the Fulani? And then in the city, you have this Miyete Allah, who they call it Fulani the Idan Suyabudi. That is city Fulani. And they connive sometimes in terms of exploiting this kind of. But subsequently, now this issue of banditry come up, which most of the politicians in the country use this bandits one way or the other. And you see this, you don't see them just like, they are well organized. If you take the part of Niger, part of Niger, you have the Dogo Gede area in Katsina, you have like Adamu, Yankuzo. But looking at all this kind of thing, these people have lost hope because there is no presence of government in these villages.
Quite an interesting story from Malam Kurfi there. And, you know, while I was watching yesterday, you know, it actually struck me on how he began to tell the story of how banditry started. And when you look at it, you'd actually see that these people were living, you know, normal lives before, you know, the mishap actually came to them, and they decided, you know, out of spite to take whatever was taken from them by force. What is your take on this whole thing? And, you know, all the other people who are, you know, involved in banditry as well, is it the same kind of mishap that came their way? Why? Like...
Yes, like Dr. Kurfi rightly said, you know, the thing evolved over time. What we know, like he said, was mere rustling. You know, the herders, you know, we were engaged in rustling. They rustle cows and what have you. Then as time goes on, this banditry came in. Like he said, with the police, with the security agents. But now the thing is snowballing into a tribal war. Why? In Ansado, for instance, Senator Ansado did an elaborate something. If you go to, particularly in the Northwest, there are youth groups called in Hausa Ensake, a volunteer vigilante per se. Yes. Vigilante in villages were formed to protect the villages from these bandits. But the excesses of these vigilantes, who are mostly houses in the Northwest, created more havoc than it was expected. Let's create this scenario. If, for instance, bandits attack a village, they stole, they rustle cows and whatever, even the houses in those areas, raise animals, particularly if you go to Sokoto, sheep and whatever, they do that. So as an aftermath, if a Fulani young man goes into a village market, a Fulani elder goes into a village market, or even a Fulani woman who hawks fra and nono, this volunteer vigilante will get them arrested, sometimes even hack them to death. So that was the beginning.
Sorry, do you see a similarity with the origin of Boko Haram as well?
No. Only that they are only similar in the devastating effects of their actions, but the motive is still different. Boko Haram is a warped ideology, It's an Islamic ideology.
Because it started by attacking, security forces as well, and
exactly, yes, because they have a political motive.
Okay, all right. Now, there's one other area or one other issue that seemed to have been endemic, and it's almost as if it's a hopeless situation in finding a way to deal with it, which is the issue of corruption. While he was talking, Dr. Kurfi mentioned the fact that the very first person he was referring to as the person who started the whole banditry thing, got frustrated after being arrested by police, and his cows were taken. Of course, we all know in Nigeria today, if you are to take a case to the police, what you will have to do to get them to attend to your issue, you'll have to make all sorts of payments here and there. Sometimes they will even tell you that there's no fuel in the vehicle that they are going to use. Yeah. So you may even find yourself giving them money to buy fuel and all of that. These are corruption. This is what corruption has done to the system, to our security and other segments of our society. So how do we treat this issue of corruption in terms of as we approach 2023, in terms of getting the right people in place of power and authority?
It's a very serious matter, very difficult to achieve what you are aiming at, because like you say, it's endemic. Even the electorate collect 500 to vote. I remember I covered a lot of elections. I said, why? He said, whether I collect money or I don't collect money, this same person I'm voting for, I will never see him again. He will go to Abuja or go to the state capital, and that's it. And that results in voter apathy. You are voting somebody you know will do nothing to improve your living condition. So that is why sometimes they resort to collecting money. The way forward, one has to do with the political parties. Come, Mr. Ilya, because of your background, because of your antecedents, secure a ticket of a political party that can win election. If you don't have money, does integrity, track records matters? Will it change between now and December, for instance? How realistic are these things? There may be change, but yes, the changes will not be big enough to, to make the environment looks what you are dreaming of. But there are instances where people collect money from these politicians and vote the right candidates. And I think that is what we should advocate.
Is it possible to do that? Is
Yes.
it possible to take someone's money and not vote the person?
Yes.
What are the chances?
The last election in Anambra, the candidate that won wasn't the candidate that gave the highest money. I don't want to mention names. Yes, he wasn't. He wasn't the richest. The ruling party guy there, the APC candidate, Andy Uba, got about 500,000 votes at the primaries. Because what that means, he rigged it. He gave money. But on the main election, he got less than 50,000 votes. What happened? We saw video footages where monies were shared. They collected the money, but they voted for the guy they believed can improve their well-being if elected.
Now, with the structure that we have, electoral structure, our political structure, is it a type that guarantees, credible people emerge as winners of election?
Yes, to a certain extent. If all other segments of the society, the religious leaders, they are the biggest culprits. Ask people to vote for people who they believe are credible, not because of what they give, not because of what the pastor or the imam gets from a particular politician, like they did in the past. There are instances, it may not be maybe a nationwide thing, but there are pockets of instances. And particularly, there are some scholars who said, no, people should vote not on ethnicity, not on the religion these politicians claim to profess. I will not vote Male Ilia simply because you have a northern name, a Muslim name. No. What can you do? Election is not appointment of imams of the national mosques or the chaplain of the economical Christian center in Abuja. No. It's a purely secular thing. It doesn't matter the religion you claim to, because I say claim. They claim to profess. No. What can you do? Can you put bread in my table? Can I drive from Abuja to Kaduna without looking back? Can I drive from Abuja to Kaduna without changing my wheels? Can my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, go to school while I'm without one predator spying at her? These are the issues, and religious leaders, the media, community leaders, and what have you, these are things we should canvass ahead of 2019. It is not the names of these people or where they come from, but their track records.
Okay.
All right, just before we go on a break, I just want want you to share your thoughts on what you think would happen to Nigeria, or where you see Nigeria if we make a mistake with our next leader.
I think things will change now. Nigeria will be wiser. Nigerians will not be blackmailed by these religious leaders who mount the rostrum and pulpits and campaign for politicians because of one thing or the other. No. Some attempted to do it, and go even on social media. There was outrage. Nigerians were more to vote along religious line in the past elections.
Are we sure that that will happen? I mean, how this message, what you are talking about, how does it get to the ordinary person on the streets? The mass number of people that most times participate in these elections. Some of these young people on social media do not really participate in elections. So how do we make sure that the message gets to the rural level, the rural communities and societies? People who are not as aware and as enlightened as you are. Those are the constituencies, and those are for me, it's where the major problem lies.
Yes, that is the responsibility of the civil society organizations. They should leave Abuja and go to these areas. Tell people this, and people now will understand. In Hausa, they say, Jikimagei. We are all reaping the fruit of what we have done in the past. You understand? Even the religious leaders, the clerical establishments, the youth groups. You know, there are pockets of instances where this thing has been implemented. And we should know it is beyond tweeting or Facebooking or Instagramming. If you don't vote on election day, somebody will be imposed on you for at least 4 years without you doing anything. I believe 2023 will be different. And you know something? President Buhari won't be on the ballot. In the last 12 years, from 2003 through 2019, President Buhari has been on the ballot. So that occultic, among the people who are trying to succeed him, none of them possess those occultic followership. And we're happy. We want a leader we can criticize without anybody else who are stigmatizing me. I want an Ilya, not perfect Ilya, that I can vote for and call to question whenever the need arises, without that she's saying that, yes, I'm doing this because I am this and this. And the party issue, we all believe that PDP was the monster before the coming of this government. No. This government is populated by majority PDP people, minus the president.
So at least it's clear to everyone now.
That the problem is not PDP. It's not party thing. Individuals. And we believe that, you know, with the realities, with the stark realities facing us, insecurity, economy, and what have you know, then we'll be wiser. That it is not a party thing, it's not an ethnic thing, it's not a religious thing.
Okay. All right, so we'll take a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll be continuing our discussion. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining here watching Daybreak, reaching you live from Trust TV headquarters in the nation's capital. And now we have in the studio Nuruddin Abdullah, editor of 21st Century Chronicle, who we have dragged and kept in the studio to talk to us about some of the contemporary issues that we are dealing with in the country. The 19th Daily Trust Dialogue held yesterday at the NAF Conference Center in Abuja, and a lot of takeaways really from that conference, talking about security, economy and politics ahead of the 2023 elections. Now, I'd like for you to talk about the role of media, even in this 2022 as we approach the 2023 election. Usually you would see all these rhetorics, by people who, are paying the pipers, and then sometimes it spells doom really, because it heightens tension in the polity, all sort of comments and all of that. It shapes, very negative perceptions about Nigerians, bringing division, hatred, and all of that. So how critical is the role of media, especially if you look at this Daily Trust Dialogue?
Media in democracy play a very critical role. Very critical role. It's the mirror of the society. It gives voice to the voiceless. You understand? Yes, people elect officials as parliamentarians, governors, and what have you. But people rely on the media to communicate their nuances to those in authority. So in that case, whatever the media does affects the entire system, the political ecosystem. If, for instance, the media allow itself to be hijacked by money bags, instead of organizing dialogue, you organize awards, where you award all the 36 governors, state governors, almost all the senators, all the blue chiefs, CEOs of blue chiefs companies, like some are doing. You're not helping the system. This is the 19th one. So look at the consistency. This is the 19th one. There is not even award, African up there.
Is it wrong to give awards?
No. But what about awards? People buy awards, you know that? Australia is going to be governing your state. So you will be scraping for all manner of awards. Shamelessly. There is no African of the Year award this year because nobody was qualified. You can only find that in Daily Trust. I've been here and I know the complaints by most money bags, politicians, fraudulent or people, billionaires with no known means of businesses. There are the people that are on the pages of it, they complain, why don't trust give us the awards? We have a criteria. So you see doctors, people who are doing things differently, people who you never know are those who have been awarded. So whatever we do, if the media decides to auction its pages, for instance, and airtime to politicians, that's bad for democracy. But create a platform like Trust did yesterday, the 19th one, where all manner of people. The event yesterday was not a PDP event. It wasn't an APC event. You understand? All segments of the society are given a platform. Come, cross-fertilize ideas. We are heading into election. How do we go about it? These are the challenges based on our experiences. How do we solve these challenges? How do we take care of them? So that is the role. And Nigerians, are not foolish. They can easily tell you, even among the various media organizations we have, which one is which one they believe, which one they trust, which one they have confidence on.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes. Okay, well, let's take a look at some words of appreciation poured in for media trust from participants.
Well, let me salute Media Trust for sustaining this dialogue annual event and also making it possible for voices to be heard and solutions being provided for the problems of our country to be solved.
Commendable, especially with the ability to draw from different facets of society. I think represented here are leadership of different sorts. And so the platform is a veritable platform for national discourse. And I must commend the organizers, but I must also recommend that the outcome of the dialogue is put out in such a way that different segments of society, social media of today is a very important platform for the dissemination of information. So I'm hoping that Media Trust will take advantage of the various social media platforms to disseminate the outcome of this dialogue.
I think Media Trust has been doing a fantastic job. This annual dialogue has become, I think, the benchmark for responsible, constructive, and productive dialogue. I've been attending many of these, and I don't miss it for anything. I think they should continue. I think people respect this dialogue, and they know that whatever comes out of it is usually of high quality. And the fact that they have never faltered from this is a great testimony to the leadership and the staff of Daily Trust. They should continue.
The dialogue should continue. All right. Thinking is something we all need to do. And move away from, we all know that there's a problem. We all know that we're angry. We all know that there's a feeling of hopelessness. We believe that, we want a better future. Let's spend more time talking about the solutions, and how to build a capacity to take us to where we want to be. And build a sense of inclusion of all ages, inclusion of all genders, inclusion of whether you schooled in Nigeria or didn't school in Nigeria, inclusion of whether you live in Nigeria or didn't live in Nigeria. We create boundaries that are not necessary. We're all Nigerians, wherever we are, and let's understand our strengths, understand our weaknesses, see how as a team we can move forward.
The dialogue should continue. That's more like a consensus from what I can see coming out of the 19th Daily Trust Dialogue that held yesterday, the 20th of January. Now, this is an annual event that happens usually to give a platform, like we said, for policy makers and all stakeholders in our polity to come together, share ideas on how to move Nigeria forward. One thing that stood out yesterday in the whole discussions is the fact that everyone agrees that Nigeria is not moving the way it should, and that there's need for credible leaders, in Nigeria for us to have any kind of change, that we aspire, economically and all of that. And education, has been pointed as one critical area that attention needs to be given, even as we approach these 2023 elections. But that seemed to have come under attack, because of security and all of that. What's the way forward here?
Yeah, unfortunately, so much has been achieved before now, but unfortunately, Boko Haram insurgency and now banditry. Zamfara schools have been closed for months. This time, nearly a year now, until just last week or some days ago that some of them were opened. Across the northwest, stretching from Katsina, Zamfara, Sokoto, and part of Nigeria. So many schools were closed for a stretch of 4 to 5 months. You understand? And the incessant attacks on these institutions equally send fears into parents. Let me keep my kids at home. Send them to school, they are abducted. And the security agencies sometimes are helpless. For more than 7 months, FGC Birni Auri students were taken. They returned just last week. Bethel Baptist School students, some of them are still in the bandits' custody, and so on and so forth. Two things. We have to approach these issues from two major perspectives. While you are campaigning for people to send their kids to school, make the schools comfortable and secured, even at the community level, community policing is key. Katsina did that, I think, after the attack on Kankara last December, a year ago, December 2020, for instance. Because if you deploy, let's say, all the police officers, they can man all the schools across the country. Even the military, they can man all the schools. So you have to, the community, the government and community must come up with a system whereby vigilante, for instance, trained should be guarding the schools. Government at the local level, at the state level, should have a system whereby those who are doing this here should be given some upkeep and what have you. So this is the only way to secure this, not the presence of maybe soldiers. The soldiers cannot be there forever.
Yeah, true. All right, now, former FIRS boss, Ifueko, yesterday, she actually spoke a lot about the economy, and she went to the extent of giving an example of some homes in some villages who can't afford to eat, and what they do is just start the fire to give an impression that, there's food, they're cooking and all that. And she said, if the stakeholders, want to see real change in Nigeria, that they cannot lead from the center. They have to come down to the level of the masses, have know firsthand or experience firsthand what the Nigerians are going through before they're able to make any impact at all. What's your thought on that?
I listened to her. What she said is valid in the sense that, like I said, over centralization. Even the media itself, the civil society organizations, everything is federal. If I ask you how much is the budget of your state, you may not know, but you can easily tell me the national budget. We have 3 tiers of government: the federal, state, and local government. But we seem to focus more on the federal than the states and local governments. At the local government level, almost 0 things is happening. And they are the closest to the people. The same thing with the states. There are states that the governors are around in their second terms. You can't find a single 1 billion or 2 billion naira project of public interest. We are not talking about them. All the NGOs are doing, all the civil societies are doing, all the media is doing is Abuja, 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 Abuja. The federal government, the budget of the 36 states is higher than the 13 trillion budget of the federal government. You understand? So that is the first step. Yes, it's valid to ask President Buhari, what is he doing with our money? It is equally valid or more expedient to ask my Kano State governor, what is he doing with our money?
Sure.
It is equally more valid to ask the chairman of Gwale local government, where I come from, what is he doing with our money? To even ask my councillor, what has he been doing at the Gwale local government secretariat? If we start that, we have to break it down. It is then that you'll know the pulse. But if, for instance, a lady in Gwale or Jakara or Kaduna, what have you, frying akara, is looking up to Buhari, the chain is the gap is too long. She should be looking at her local councillor, local government chairman, governor.
Well, thank you so much. We would like to just take, some clips from the panel discussion yesterday at the 19th Daily Trust Dialogue, just before we round up the show. Take a look.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baba Ahmed. Okay, so let me come back to you, Mrs. Okaro, because in many ways there are things that have been said here are things I've heard last year, the year before, and the year before. And indeed, even though Nigeria has never been where it is when it comes to insecurity like we are today, literally at every election, we've sort of heard turning point. We've heard this is it for us, we need to make the right decision, etc., etc. And yet somehow the political class don't seem to make the connection between some of what they do and some of the issues that we face. So given the theme of this particular panel, what I'd like you to deal with, if you could, is that nexus between politics and what we are going through. You'd already started talking about ways and means. If you could sort of focus a little bit more on that to begin with. The mic is right there, yes.
Right, thank you very much. I think first of all, one of the things we don't really pay a lot of attention to is competence. I think our hearts are in the right place. But we don't have the competence to translate what we want to, translate where we are now to where we want to. And I think there needs to be a lot more conversation about that. And that's why I talked a lot about education. It's not education of necessarily, oh, you need more primary schools or you need more secondary schools. It's the content of it. And education is broader than just, the real education is by doing. And there are certain aspects of our culture, for example, that people just don't like making mistakes. They don't like to fail without realizing that those things help to build competence. So coming back to our politics, we need to now start asking ourselves, who are those that are capable? I don't even want to talk about and capability from a track record, from what you have seen, not CV, not which school you attended. Because I see some CVs being, that doesn't tell capability. Show what you have actually done to translate from A to B and demonstrate that. And we should also not keep, lower our standards, because again, I've been in conversations. I think maybe one thing is we need to be honest with ourselves. We really need to be. But I don't even know whether that word is something that means the same to everybody else.
Let me bring in the person who's sort of been in the thick of politics here, yes. Dr. Baba Ahmed. So again, we've heard these things, we need to find competency and all that, but you look at political party structures. You look at the way primaries are conducted, and let's be realistic, two parties, APC, PDP, are the two leading parties that are likely to produce leadership, at least at the national level. And yet their internal processes don't seem democratic. How do we, in this 1 year that is left, find a way to ensure that their processes are so improved that they throw up the kind of competent leadership that you're talking about? Is it possible?
Honestly, no. But it's not entirely a hopeless situation. We can produce a good, competent president, provided within his party, he's the best. Meaning, his record is the strongest, he's been scrutinized, he's gone through a very critical scrutiny by stakeholders, by everybody. That's important. So this is why it's important to look at those changes that have been introduced in terms of the manner in which ordinary people decide who an aspirant should be, who a candidate should be. That's important. The president doesn't like it, National Assembly don't like it, and they're going to throw it out, which is a shame. But if they do, if this presidency moves out, another president should come back, should look at it. But the most important thing here is ask any candidate now who aspires to be president, what exactly do you want to do with this country? How do you plan to address the issue of insecurity? Do you understand banditry? Do you understand the genesis? My brother here just said simply a fundamental issue. You don't even understand banditry. It's not about Fulani anymore. It might have started about Fulani, but it's about everybody. It's a whole industry. Ask the candidate, how do you intend to fix youth alienation? A lot of young people feel thoroughly alienated. They are not part of this country, and they will not be part of this country. If the parties commit to giving tickets only to the best, on the basis of the understanding that he or she won stands a chance of being elected president of Nigeria. And two, will do those things that need to be done. On our part, for instance, we have said we don't want to talk to any candidate unless we see him and his team now. Now, where is your team that you're going to transit, campaign with and transit to the presidency? Where is your Nupe man? Where is your Igbo? Where is your Yoruba? In your campaign. It's important. We want to see merit, we want to see competence, we want to see records, and we want to see clear program that has to do with the way in which we will deal with insecurity, with poverty, with education, with young people, with secessionist tendencies. How are you going to address these issues? So it's important for our politicians to know that the bar is not as low as they think simply because we have ethnicized it. It's actually higher. It has never been higher.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Baba Ahmed. Dr. Rufai, you talked about rural and urban communities, and I think Madame actually went a bit further and talked about us having multiple societies, up to maybe 5. In places like Zamfara, where we've seen the worsening of the situation. So 12, 13 years ago, those areas had 4, 5 million out-of-school children. And these ones are the ones that have sort of transitioned, no skills, no education, nothing really to do, so very vulnerable to all these things. We currently have 13 million out-of-school children. And whether we like it or not, there's a huge disparity between the South and the North when it comes to certain data, which kind of points to where we're going. You've worked a lot in these communities. Do they even recognize government? Are they even interested that we're talking about politics in 2023? Are these things that are in conversation right now? Or they don't even know and they don't care?
Actually, if you go to some of these rural areas, they have no business whatsoever with politics. What they are after is nothing other than security. And we've seen instances and situations where they have absolutely rendered their lives to the bandits. So now, the issue of election, the issue of politics...
Let me just ask you to clarify. They've done that because there's no state presence.
Yeah.
And that's the only authority that is in the area.
Yeah, actually, in terms of presence of states in some of these rural areas is absolutely zero. Zero in the sense that you cannot find anything in terms of provision of education, infrastructural development, for instance, the development of all other infrastructural facilities are actually not there. So the fact remains that these are people that solely and wholly relied on what? On the bandits to provide them with security, with bandits to provide them with judicial services, on the bandits to provide them with even local and traditional governance. So the fact remains that you go to rural part of Zamfara, for instance, nobody is talking about democracy, nobody is talking about election, and going by the way things are moving at the moment, for instance, definitely election will actually be very, very difficult to be held in some of these rural areas because they have no business with that.
Mrs. Okaru, let me draw your attention to something you referenced very briefly, and that's the issue of the position of women. Because data has shown, and this is not going to be very popular, unfortunately, but some of our cultural practices, there's a direct correlation between them and the state we're in, particularly in the North. So, for example, early child marriage means that children who are children are giving birth to children. They're not educated, they don't have any skills. One man, barely literate, 30-something children, and then divorcing, and the women are not able to look after their children. So how significant is it that as we approach elections, that politicians begin to take into account the population they like to ignore until they want votes, that's women, and start to actively think in terms of how the policies on women can actually have a bearing on issues like insecurity and the economy?
That's a multi-level question. Well, one is women is very important. Two, I don't think it's only women that feel women are important. I think men, certain men actually have helped promote women and ensure that, because they recognize the role women play in the economy. And I think for me that's really the stress, because I think we undervalue the role women play. Women are fantastic multitaskers. Women are extremely more focused, less distracted. So there are certain strengths that the country itself is losing, not just because they are women, but because they bring those strengths to bear. So it's extremely important. Now, I also feel that it's not just the politicians. So I think the politicians need to, in the selection process that Dr. Baba Ahmed was talking about, must necessarily include capable women, and they are there. They are there in the parties, they are there in the country, must include capable women, must ensure that there's a reasonable number for it to be worthwhile. So we're not discussing just one or two, and research has shown that the more women you have driving governance, whether it's at the private sector or the public sector, you actually prosper. Now, going back to the issue of traditional practices, I must say that you've touched an issue that we could spend the whole day on, because the traditional practices are actually not just against women. The traditional practices are against progress. And let me talk about, so beyond the issue, so if you take issues of child marriage, for example, sometimes you find people not able to speak out because of the tradition. And in not speaking out, they bottle up so many things, and that now becomes habit. Now, move that to private sector, move that to boards, move that to issues like this. A lot of people don't speak up. So child marriage is just one of several other things that drive the fact that we are not giving people the freedom that they need to be able to be the best that they can.
Well, there you have it. Highlights from the panel discussion yesterday at the 19th Daily Trust Dialogue. A lot of issues to chew really from there. I mean, when you talk about the absence of governance at the rural level, over concentration at the center, population explosion, a number of people that can't really not be managed in our time. So when you look at some of these issues, you feel hopeless. How do you feel about the situation, especially in the northern part of the country, in terms of population?
In the north in particular, when compared to other part of the country, we fight for frivolities and ignore the fundamentals. Small issues that we don't even not bother ourselves with, at least we do. Look at population explosion. It's a reality. The most populous Muslim nation in the world, Indonesia, is tackling its population issue. But here we don't. You don't have a reliable means of livelihood. You get married to about 4 wives, having uncountable number of children. How do you cater for them? So these are issues that in the north, for instance, that we have to look inward, or else the future will be very bleak for us.
Okay, we wish we could actually continue this discussion, but sadly, we have to wrap up here. Time isn't on our side. Thank you so much, Nuruddin Abdullah. We actually had an awesome time with you. He's editor, 21st Century Chronicle. We hope to have you here again.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that, we wrap up a Daybreak on Trust TV. I remain Darshan Husseina Usman, and the weekend is here, so try and rest.
Yes.
Very important. It was quite a hectic week.
True.
So try and rest.
True. All right. My name is Ayubelia. Catch up on our YouTube and also connect with us via our social media handles. Bye for now.